Welcome to GateCrashers, a podcast dedicated to kicking open the door to your next favorite thing. Our mission, our creed, and our code is this: to make all things more approachable and accessible to everyone. We want you to find a universe that you'll fall in love with. Damn, that was great podcast voice.
Great podcast voice, Dan.
I'm Jake. Shit, I'm Dan.
Got him. Got him.
Oh, shit. All right. Well, I'm Dan. My pronouns are he, him.
I'm Jake. You also use he, him pronouns.
And Jake, what's going on the show today?
We are joined by comic and children's book writer of things such as X-Men 92, House of... I want to say 1992. Spider-Ham, Archer and Armstrong Forever, Party and Prey, Adventure Kingdom, Razorblades, The Horror Magazine, and Rainbow Bridge. So let's welcome back Steve Foxe.
Hello, thanks for having me back.
Steve, always excited when you're here. You're one of our most frequent guests. Very excited to have you again. We've gotten to chat recently about when you released Party and Prey, so we've gotten to talk about some pretty recent stuff. But between then and now, there's been a lot of cool horror stuff, except there's a lot of shitty horror stuff. So I really want to start off with that. Before we get into all your projects, because you're a big superstar now, I want to hear your thoughts on Texas Chainsaw 2: Rise of Gen Z.
Oh man, leave meeting. Yeah, I mean, I would call that one of the most irredeemable uses of my time in my entire 32 and a half years of life. I would say it so far transcends like entertainingly bad to wrap all the way back around to like, you know how like when Moira dies, she resurrects in the womb. I felt like this movie was punching me in the womb and just continuing to punch me throughout my entire life.
Your poor mother.
It was worse than every other Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is saying something for that franchise, which is really, lifted up by its good entries and dragged down by some real dreck. Yeah, I didn't like it. But hey, that woman from Mandy was actually pretty good. Horribly written role, but a pretty good casting choice.
Yeah. My favorite part was when they brought back Sally. Is that what her name is from the original? But it's not her. And then they threw her in the fucking trash. The original final girl, and they were like, nah, fuck it. Throw her in the literal fucking trash.
Yeah, I don't like the trend of. I mean, I could spend the entire podcast ranting about the like requel trend.
Requels.
And I didn't like Scream 5 either, so I'll include that one in the heap. But I'm not a big fan of. Let's bring back the final girl, make her entire personality that she's been a prepper for 40 years, and then chump her out immediately.
So this I've only seen. I don't watch a lot of horror movies. I just read a lot of horror comics. I didn't realize that was become a trend. I just thought that was in Halloween.
Well, Texas Chainsaw Massacre lifts it and is so much worse.
Ooh.
Yeah. But hey, you know what was good? Did you see X?
I saw that. I saw a screen here.
I loved X. X gave me everything I wanted from a modern day homage to Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah, that's how I felt too, because it was like very much in that vein of like there is a lot of violence, but you don't see all of it.
Yeah.
Well, now you can make this next question debatable on which X you refer to.
So we always start with like a fun question, and you have answered our sandwich question, and the last one I asked you. I did ask this to Orlando, so I was like, I want to ask this again because you're both now X writers. Mm-hmm. What X couple would you double date with?
Oh my gosh. I wouldn't be an equal partner, but I would love to just walk behind Forge and Storm carrying their bags for them and like opening doors and making sure they're comfortable and attended to. I think that they would be I think they'd be hard to look at in real life because they'd both be so attractive. You know what I mean? So I don't know what it says about me that my answer wasn't like, oh, let me join like, Bobby and Christian and have a fun gay throuple, but like, let me hold the door open for attractive people. But yeah, Storm and Forge would be my answer.
Huh. Yeah, that's says a little bit about you. You better talk to your therapist.
Ooh, bodied.
It is pretty funny that we're seeing this Hoxbox 90 Eyes story coming pretty quickly on the heels of the original story, because the 90s X-Men show was doing the same thing. It was adapting these stories so much quicker than we see even today. Like, we're not seeing these big, huge stories become like cartoons or movies super quickly. So I wanted to ask, did you learn a lot about what you know from the X-Men from the TV show or from comics?
Oh, absolutely from the TV show. I mean, I was born in the late 80s, so I was perfectly primed to get in on X-Men animated series. And my first exposure actually was Pride of the X-Men, which I love a lot and which made a big impact on me. But X-Men the animated series, as you said, it adapted so many classic storylines. So the first time I ever experienced the Dark Phoenix saga or Days of Future Past or any of these, they had Gambit and Bishop and Cable and Jubilee in them. So, of course, it was a bit of a surprise when I got around to reading the comics as I got a little bit older. But no, I mean, I think that's a big reason why X-Men the animated series was such a phenomenon, was because in all of animation adaptation history, it's not like it's all one-to-one, but it was such a clear on-ramp to the comics that if you were watching the cartoon, you enjoyed the cartoon, what you liked about the X-Men there, you could go and find in the comics really easily. I love X-Men Evolution when that came about, but there was no corollary where you could go over and say, okay, let me read a teen drama set in the X-Men universe. That's not something that existed at the time in that kind of form. Of course, there are always teen books, but so no, X-Men animated series, I probably experienced every major storyline that way before I experienced it via comics.
And you talking about the other X-Men series, it's like kind of weird that like that's never continued in comics. Also, Spider-Man, like I feel like people would eat this shit up if there was a 90s Spider-Man book.
My boyfriend and I
Radioactive Spider-Man.
Yeah, we just started watching the Spider-Man animated series actually from episode 1, because when I was a kid, I had watched that one more sporadically. I thought it was cool, but it didn't excite me the same way X-Men did. I was kind of a late in life Spider-Man fan. But watching it's super entertaining, and it's fun to see the changes they made. It's kind of not as direct as the X-Men cartoon was, but it's still super fun. And yeah, I mean, I would love to see more projects like that. I think some of them are probably legally, there's probably a reason we haven't seen some of those. They're weird snafus here and there. But yeah, I would love to see a Spider-Man one in particular.
I just want to see the oil slick coloring on Venom again.
It looks so
they
good.
did.
That's the best looking
Jordan
Venom.
Gibson did a really amazing variant cover a couple months back for, I can't remember which Spider-Man issue now, but actually, I mean, it was almost a year ago now because time has no meaning, but it was like that exact Toy Biz action figure kind of look.
Was it when Noel was coming?
No. Noel was gone.
He already
Noel
came.
Yeah, he came. He had his refraction period. He got out of there. No, it was something last year. But it was amazing seeing that on a comic book cover, and I would be first in line to buy something like that. I mean, the current Ben Reilly series is kind of giving some of that with David Baldion's art is a really good fit for that. But yeah, I would love to see a straight up continuation of the 90s Spider-Man show.
Are there any versions of the characters you prefer the TV versions of rather than the comics?
That's a loaded question because the comic company is the one that can employ me, not the animation studio. I think answering like today, it's hard not to say Beast, because Beast has had such a crazy character arc, and Beast's evolution into his current form is something that I think is really interesting narratively. I'm invested in it as a reader, but I also love getting to see, happy-go-lucky, fun college professor Beast who isn't like cruelty is the point. It's nice to see that version again. So he was the most bittersweet to write for the same reason, because I was remembering what Hank felt like as a kid and how fun he was. And now he's a monster.
And it was all the cat stuff. Yeah.
Hey, I like the cat stuff.
I mean, so do I. Well, the queer baiting thing was kind of weird, but
what was I reading? I was reading stuff. I'm reading all of Blob, and I never realized he was gray at one point. I had no idea that Beast was just
gray.
He
started out
gray. Yeah, that's why Dark Beast is that color, because he just never changed blue.
Oh, that also tracks. Yeah. I also didn't know, what was his name, Joe Cool. I always thought that was just like a extra costume in video games. Like there wasn't an actual character that Hulk worked at a Las Vegas casino.
Mr. Fix-It?
Oh, that's Mr. Fix-It, not Joe Cool. Mr. Fix-It. I just thought he was a costume for video games.
Mr. Fix-It has a long and an illustrious history in the comics.
Yeah.
Like he was like a bouncer in like Vegas. Yeah, I think that was Peter David, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Wild. Absolutely wild stuff. Now, were you the one to approach Marvel about doing this? Did you pitch it as a 90s book?
No, man, I wish I had the guts to just hit up Marvel and be like, hey, let me do a 30th anniversary X-Men animated series. No, Jordan White, he's the head of the X-Men line, and we've known each other for a long time. I was his intern 11 years ago. We stayed in touch. And he read Spider-Ham, and he thought I'd be a good fit for an X-Men 92 anniversary project. And it was his very rough idea to say, the cartoon had always adapted classic storylines. What would you think about trying to do the Krakoa era? And I'm such a huge fan of the current era. I know most of the people working on it. I have so much respect for them. And I was never a lapsed X-Men fan. I've been a constant X-Men reader since I was a kid, but the Krakoa era felt like such a resurgence of excitement that I just left it the chance. I didn't even pitch any alternatives. I just immediately started putting together a plan for how to fit, like 60 issues of comics into 5 issues.
Damn. That's wild. Do you think the setting of being in the 90s has any hindrance on how you're able to tell the story? Are you approaching this as it is set in the 90s? Does it have the same politics as a 90s story would?
Well, part of it is this story is 100 pages long. I'm not going to get the chance to do and explore every nook and cranny that the main line has had the chance to do, because they've had 100 issues. But I don't really think of anything like that as a hindrance. I really like storytelling challenges or prompts or rules to play in, anything like that. So it is set in the 90s. And the way I've explained it to people is like, it's been acknowledged that technically this is its own continuity, heavily influenced by the cartoon. To me, I am writing this as if the X-Men on your lunchbox or your hoodie or your pajamas leapt off onto the page. Like, this is the X-Men we're nostalgic for. This is what we think of as this iconic 90s version. So it's pulling from the cartoon. It's also pulling from the comics of the early 90s. There's some characters that never made it onto the cartoon, but because they had already appeared by 92, I folded them into the book.
So what you're saying is this is specifically the X-Men that you read about after going to Pizza Hut.
Yes, this is the Pizza Hut-ification of the X-Men.
You heard it here, folks.
Best version.
It sounds like a lot to manage, but I mean, it's just like such a pure distillation of X-Men to me. Like I love every iteration of the team, and these are such fun ones to combine. What I will say, per your question of it being a hindrance, is a lot of the Hickmanisms do not translate to the 90s. Like, you would not have infographic pages like that. You would not necessarily have some of the more forward-thinking progressive science fiction. Like, we just weren't treating genre the same way 30 years ago. Obviously some people were. But
I do think those info pages were a little bit easier than the Hickman ones.
Listen, Jake, I was going to say it. I didn't want to say it because I don't want the fans.
I can't do the switch.
I can't do the data. Like, I love your data pages because I'm not. I'm not ready to peel my face off like a mask.
Yours reminded me of the Burger King Kids Club commercials.
Yes, I think I included a screenshot from those and from Saved by the Bell for the first one. And the design team really knocked it out of the park. So that was one of the, I pitched Jordan and the rest of the team on if we could try to do design pages to look early 90s, because I had the option to do 2 design pages if I wanted. And of course I did, because it's more opportunity to explore those nooks and crannies. But I knew the Hickman style and the Tom Muller and everyone else who contributed to that was not going to fit the tone of this book. And I'm very grateful that the design team really busted their butt to make it work. And not only that, people have seen that first spread, but the design pages are different in every issue. Like, they have designed completely different homages for every issue in the series. And I was just approving the ones for issue 3 earlier today, and I was just laughing my head off.
Bowling alley floors.
So this comes out, we'll be talking after issue 2 is hit the stands. So there is, well, first off, how much input did you have on like the content of these pages before I ask you more?
I write everything that's on the pages, and I made suggestions for how they should look. So for instance, in issue 2, I suggested a mixtape representing the inner circle, and I chose the songs, and I said who had made it. And I said, it should kind of look like a crappy Xerox that you would make in the 90s if you're making a scanned zine for someone. And the design team just ran with it and went above and beyond. And then the other page, I said, sort of like a Tiger Beat, like dating profile, like cutest boys in Hollywood. But, the most eligible members of Orcus, the organization that wants to kill all mutants.
Okay, so you took all my questions. Totally fine. I love the zine feeling of it, because I don't know if, again, I'm not an expert. Was it New Mutants or Generation X that had a zine issue?
Oh,
was it Generation
must have been
X?
Generation X, because that does not happen.
I think Generation X had a zine issue. And seeing this page with the jams on it, this is probably, I love your series. This is my favorite page so far, just because it has such a distinct feeling that you don't typically get with a lot of 90s nostalgia from what I consume. Also really cool to know that you picked these songs, because I'm not going to ruin it, but the Mr. Sinister line is fucking incredible.
Thank you. Yeah.
I have fallen in love with that character. I know he sucks. Like, he's a bad,
well, he took that
mad scientist.
He took that part of his brain out.
Yeah, he took it out. Good for him. Also, he's not real, so
yeah. That's also a good element to remember.
It's a big thing a lot of people oftentimes forget. Now, you and I have been friends for a while, and a couple months ago, I was debating on Twitter if I should make a irresponsible purchase, and you talked me into it, which was the 90s Wolverine X-Men. The figure that comes in the VHS box. He's not here yet.
I know. I pre-ordered the same one.
Now, you're writing the best X-Men ever. Undoubtedly the greatest character Marvel has ever done. That is not Spider-Man. All of this is on record.
Yeah, this is a 180.
How do you approach writing the character? Like, I know he's a distillation, but what about the character do you want to highlight the most in your writing?
Oh boy, that's a big question. I mean, a guiding light for all of the main cast when it comes to writing X-Men 92 is the work of the voice actors from the cast. When I hear Wolverine in my head, I'm hearing Cal Dodd. And I think that's more or less been true my entire life, even when I'm reading storylines that, of course, you cannot read in the animated inflection. Like, I'm not going to read New X-Men and hear those voices in the same way, but they have influenced my perception of these characters for 30 years now. Wolverine, to me, is such a enduring character because he has proven to fit almost any need. If you want the gruff loner, he's a gruff loner. If you want the hopeless romantic, he's a hopeless romantic. If you want like growly dad, he's growly dad. And I think that to me, he is a matrix of those traits. And throughout X-Men 92, you're going to see how those traits kind of push and pull with one another. Especially, if you haven't read issue 1, spoiler alert, the X-Men believe Jubilee is dead. But Jubilee is actually fulfilling the Moira role in this series. Her secondary mutation enables her to create a big bang each time she dies and reset the universe. So Jubilee, Wolverine feels paternal toward. Jean, Wolverine feels an attraction, affection, protectiveness toward. The island as a community, Wolverine feels attention with, because he cannot not wait for that other shoe to drop. Like, he's the one who's already sniffing out, like, okay, something about this has to have a dark side. So I would say those are like the 3 pillars that kind of form Wolverine to me.
I think that's funny because I think Ben Percy described his relationship with Krakoa the exact same way, that he's just waiting for the other shoe to drop. You did mention Jean, and being that we're doing this in a 90s style, listeners at home, this is an audio medium. Pretend I have a folded note and I'm slipping it across the desk to you right now. And when you open it up, inside it says Wolverine plus Jean Y/N with a question mark. What do you?
Wolverine Y/N. Oh, Wolverine plus Jean. Well, I lost the ability to read for a second. Okay. I grabbed the pencil near me and I write M question mark.
God damn it.
Listen, this is based on the animated series, so you're not going to see hot tub polyamory, but I think that, one of the most iconic images from the animated series is Wolverine stroking a picture of Jean. So I would be foolish to not touch upon that in some way. And there's a scene in issue 2 where they get kind of a moment alone, and I think I described it as Jean sitting on a big flower, but then when I got the page from Salva, it was certainly symbolic, I would say, which really actually fit the vibe of the scene. And Salva's been such an amazing collaborator. So I was like, yeah, bring on that, Georgia O'Keeffe. Let's do it.
It is a very beautiful page.
I thought you were going to say a very beautiful flower. Like,
we're really diving into it here. Do you think Jubilee as a lead is more relatable for more people rather than Moira and whatever the fuck she's got going on? I think she's a robot or some goofy shit now, but
yeah. Well, I mean, I loved X Lives and X Deaths, but I won't spoil it for listeners if they haven't read it. I also, at this point, I mean, I'm probably going to end up making a tweet about this, so now it's going to sound like I'm like focus testing my jokes here. But when you're like in an editorial office and you're friends with enough people and you're doing a nostalgic series, I'm constantly reading like comics from 30 years ago, comics that won't come out for 3 months, and comics that like just came out. And I feel like that like Dr. Manhattan meme from the Watchmen TV show, where it's like, it's April 1993. I'm reading Executioner's Song. It's July 2022. I'm reading the Hellfire Gala. So I forget what's out there in the world. Jubilee, that was your original question before I started testing my jokes. Jubilee's a divisive character. And when we chose her to play this role, I knew that there were going to be people who just do not jive with Jubilee whatsoever. But I wanted to swap out Moira because my feeling was that if you're going to pay $20, $25, whatever cover price is to read this series, which is influencing and adapting a book that came out 3 years ago, it has to offer a new and original story. It is a what if. It doesn't say what if on the title, but this is a what if. It's not just an abridged retelling. It's not an illustrated Wikipedia article. It is its own storyline. And swapping in Jubilee served a couple functions. It made it more unique from the Moira storyline. It represented 1992 heavily. And I forgot my third one.
Good enough.
And it celebrates Jubilee, who's a character who, I think something distinct about the X-Men is that they almost always have like a youth viewpoint character. And Jubilee, out of all of them, is kind of the most tied to her era. Like, characters like Pixie and Armor, they haven't necessarily stuck around all the time, but they're not really glued to like 2005. Whereas Jubilee, because she was created in 1989 and she was created to really feel like a child of that era, people associate her with the 90s. And so the Jubilee haters are like, oh, she's so annoying. She's the mall rat. She's this Bart Simpson character. So you have this like kind of love-hate relationship with her. And putting her in that role allowed me to really celebrate the 90s-ness of it all and celebrate this version of Jubilee we haven't seen in a while, because unlike every other member of the cast, Jubilee has aged. Everyone else is kind of ambiguously the same age they were in the 90s. And they've all, of course, grown and changed, but she's been a vampire. She's a surrogate mother. She's gone through
her growth paused for a little bit when she was a vampire.
And, biologically, you can't do a lot of growing as a vampire, but she is in a much different place than she was in the 90s. And there's not really any way to regress that in the main line. Not that you should. I like modern Jubilee a lot. I'm excited to see her in Exterminators. I love seeing her in Excalibur. But I think for celebrating this series, she really represents that like pure 90s feeling.
Yeah. Before I get to I have two quick ones before I pass it over to Jake. Not a Jubilee.
I want everyone to know. On my phone, Dan is Jubilee, and it's the image of her in the opening shooting off her fireworks.
Yes,
and it's the animated series one, so it's the whitewashed one that's bad. Don't whitewash characters.
But I just never. I can't. I really like her in this book because it's like, oh yeah, I liked the cartoon.
But you don't normally like most of the POV characters they put in.
No, you
didn't really like Kitty Pryde.
Not a lot of X-Men.
Kitty Pryde either.
Yeah. No, they're probably not my favorite characters in any of the books. No, I just don't. I don't know. They're not for me. But I really have been enjoying Jubilee in this, and I don't know where I was going with that.
I think it's just like a fun inversion. Like the nice thing about I was nervous for the first issue to come out, of course, because I haven't done anything with this kind of visibility, but people did seem to take it for what it is, which is a fun tribute. Like it's not like this is the only book in the line. You have very serious options to pick up. So if you're reading X-Men 92, House of 92, you can kind of just roll with the punches, I think, and enjoy it for the goofiness it is. And Jubilee's a fun voice to tap into because
she's very
people
fun.
don't talk like that anymore.
Yeah. So with her, she's a big arcade kid. And I think most of my love from the X-Men does come from going down the Jersey Shore and playing the X-Men arcade game with my dad when I was young. Now, in issue 2, there is a panel where we have the literally, I think the word arcade appears in the panel with all of these characters who are the pride of the X-Men. It's the lineup. Was that intentional by you, or was that a combo of you and Salva Espin, the artist for the series?
That was all me because, like I said, pride of the. I mean, I didn't draw it, but the idea was all me because Pride of the X-Men, like I said, was my first exposure to the X-Men. That really imprinted on me. Getting that VHS at a young age, the first time I ever saw the X-Men, it included Emma Frost in the Brotherhood of Mutants and Dazzler on the team. And, these things, those characters were not prominent in the animated series. Toad was not prominent. Blob was not prominent. Kitty Pryde never showed up. So my first exposure to the X-Men still planted this seed for a lot of characters that then wouldn't really blossom for like a decade later until I was more heavily into the comics. And I really want to pay tribute to Pride of the X-Men. The other thing, like we said earlier, is there are probably legal logistics that make it difficult to do stuff with some of the other cartoons. But the nice thing about Pride of the X-Men is they were all in completely comic accurate costumes. So that was an homage that I could very safely do. For Salva, though, the Jubilee debut page in issue 1, where she's in her bunker, a lot of the details on that page are him. So she's playing like an Incredible Hulk video game. There's the Liefeld Captain America on a magazine. She has like a Spider-Man plushie. I asked for the Dazzler poster because I love Dazzler, but he also drew a Lila Cheney poster. So, Salva's brought so much to this book, and a lot of the nods and background things are a combination of both of us.
I love that because there have been a couple of Spider-Man things. People know Spider-Man's my favorite, so seeing him in X-Men stuff always makes me really happy.
You're gonna get to see a little more. I'd keep your eyes peeled in issue 4.
Oh God, I'm so that makes why I was talking about Jubilee. I love the relationship. I don't like them in the comics, but I love the relationship that Wolverine and Jubilee have. That he's kind of like this gruff dad type. So seeing that in this was really nice because like. He like does anything for all these kids that he randomly just picks up. Oh, he's a great dad to anyone who is not his own son.
Yes, pretty much. As long as you're not. Don't forget all the kids he slaughtered.
He killed all them.
He's killed a lot of kids. Little Anakin Skywalker going there. One more before I pass it over to Jake. Adam X the X-Treme.
I mean, I couldn't say definitively, but I can say my self-imposed rule was that I would not use any character who did not either appear on the show or existed before 1993 or 4. And Adam X existed by that point. So who knows what you might see in issue 4 about page 15 or 16.
Good to know. Do you know if Salva works digital or is he physical?
I believe he's all digital. I would have snapped up so many of these pages.
I'll just buy the editor print, whatever they have.
The artist print.
I have that one for X Factor for Adam X.
The world's most dedicated Adam X collector.
Someone's got to be.
I'm the guy.
Someone's got to do it.
Jake, it is all you now.
All right, now it's your job to make random quips. To you, what makes Archer and Armstrong appealing?
Ooh, Archer and Armstrong are appealing to me because they are, yes, on the surface, kind of a buddy comedy duo, but I also think they're one of the most nuanced and battle-tested friendships in comics. Like, yeah, a lot of characters have existing relationships. A lot of characters have friends. You think of people like Peter Parker and Johnny Storm or Batman and Superman. But when you really think about like characters for whom their friendships are their defining relationship, you narrow that list down a lot. And I think that Archer and Armstrong, when they're at their best, are right up there with like Booster Gold and Blue Beetle. They play off of each other so well. They are really a duo. A very dynamic one at that. And it's also just fun as a writer because you have a straight man in Archer, and I mean that in the comedy sense, along with sexuality. But and then you have Armstrong, who's a little more loosey-goosey, and it's just fun to play them off of each other. And also, they're just a really fun balance of comedy and action. Straight up comedy is hard to do in comics. Like, for whatever reason, readers don't really respond to it that well. Comedy is hard to write in general. And I think that Archer and Armstrong really nail like action adventure with comedy.
I'm trying to think of the way I want to phrase this. I think it's a very great thing that Archer is very much... While he's a trained assassin from a cult.
Who isn't?
It's true. I mean, we all have.
It's like GateCrashers is.
Yeah. He's very much a Boy Scout.
Yes.
Like he only refers to Armstrong as Mr. Armstrong. even though they're friends, he still that in some way defers to him in like a formal manner, and I think that's very interesting. You also answered the second question about how you feel about their dynamic. So, do you think that Archer and Armstrong is accessible for new readers?
Well, there's a limit to how much I can answer that, because I can certainly think it is, and then a new reader can be like, I don't get it. But I will say...
I can say it is, because that's the first Archer and Armstrong thing I've ever read.
Well, thank you for confirming my hopes. Yeah, I mean, so I developed this book with Rob Levin, he's my editor at Valiant, and Audrey Meeker, the assistant editor. And we really went into it knowing that if we were only serving the existing Archer and Armstrong readership, we're narrowing our view and slice to the pie. So we worked to make sure the first issue was not an exposition dump, but you would get everything you needed to understand what's going on. I'm a big proponent of reading with an open mind and reading generously. Like, I want to read a book or watch a movie or whatever on its own terms. And I understand, or at least I like to think I understand, if a comic doesn't tell me something in the first issue, it's because it has a reason to hold it back. But I wanted to make sure readers had all the tools they needed to understand what they needed to know. You're not going to read the first issue and completely understand the Boone or Archer's family, but you don't need to completely understand it to read our series. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, most of that I just kind of went to the wiki and just said, okay, let me fill in some gaps for myself. So with the series taking place in the Valiant universe, will there be any Easter eggs or cameos that fans of the publisher will want to look out for?
So in the first arc, which is the first 4 issues, there are some small cameos, but part of making sure it felt both accessible and new is that we really wanted to add to the universe. So you're going to see new faces, new characters, something that you as a reader, whether you're a returning Valiant reader or this is your first Valiant comic, you're going to be on the ground floor meeting them. For the second arc, 5 through 8, we are going to see some more familiar faces and some sort of cross-company cameos, just to place it in the wider Valiant universe a bit more. But I think it's a balancing act, because you don't want to overwhelm readers thinking, oh, who's this? Am I supposed to know who this is? My boyfriend's always a good beta reader for me, because he's not a comic person. So I know if he reads an issue and he's like, oh, I don't know who this is, I don't get it. Maybe in my mind, that person's a throwaway cameo, but something about the issue made him think that person was important. So that's something I need to go back and look at. But yes, to answer your question more succinctly, first arc, mostly new faces with a little nod here and there. Second arc, we're going to explore the wider Valiant universe a bit more.
Okay, so in the book, there are boxes defining the actions such as attacks and moves. Whose choice was it to include these?
So that's actually a long-standing Archer and Armstrong tradition. So Obi's ability is to access the Akashic field, which is kind of like a reservoir of all human talents and abilities. So at any time he can pull up, if you know Taekwondo, he can pull up your Taekwondo knowledge. And those captions are how those abilities were depicted throughout the Fred Van Lente run of the book, which was the first run when Valiant relaunched. And they're not present in every single use, but we thought they were a fun way to show off his power, especially because, like I said, we didn't want to go overly expositional and explain every detail of his power. So showing them in that way, you get a sense of what he's doing, but we keep the action moving. Hassan Otsman Elhau, the letterer, he's one of my closest friends in comics and one of my favorite collaborators. So any chance I get to give Haas fun, cool stuff to do, I will take.
I will say I wrote that question, and again, I'm also new to Archer and Armstrong. the book is very accessible for new readers, but I'll take the brunt of putting that in there, not understanding. I pretty much, the things I know in Valiant start with Punk and end with Mambo. So,
hey, I mean,
and in the middle, it's NFT.
You might get a mention of Punk Mambo later in the series. You have to keep your eyes peeled.
Good to know.
Yeah, so those.
I do think the company's doing a lot of exciting things. So
yeah, and I'm
book-wise,
privy to some stuff that isn't public yet, and I can say that Valiant absolutely has big plans ahead. I'm really excited and honored to be part of them. And I think that, they got hit particularly hard during COVID with books getting delayed and staggered. But I think that they're coming out of it this year with a really strong slate of relaunches. And I hope folks check it out because all these new number ones are going to be very accessible, whether you've read Bloodshot or Exo-Man of War before or not.
So recently, you and I met at Third Eye Comics where you were signing, and I often bring cookies there, and you politely declined because of your being vegan. So I want to ask, what's your favorite vegan snack?
Ooh, everything. I'm a big dark chocolate guy, so I do love that as sweets. So Steve Orlando, who I was there signing with, he's quite the foodie, and he booked a dinner for us the night before at this like upscale vegan place, and then he proceeded to order like half the menu. So we ate quite a bit.
Which vegan restaurant?
I think it's called Planta in Bethesda. It was amazing, and the vegan sushi and all these vegan dips and everything. My stomach's hurting thinking about it because we just ate so much there. But yes, dark chocolate, and then pretty much anything carb heavy.
There's actually a restaurant, a cafe in Annapolis, if you ever end up back there, that does have a lot of vegan stuff on there. I'll try to remember. I think it's like Sherry's or something. Sherry's Cafe. Don't quote me on that. I went there and I had some really good French toast, and I was like, oh, it's delicious. Okay, so would you rather have Armstrong's type of immortality or the good old cocoa and egg?
Ooh, that's tough. I mean, I don't want to feel pain, so I want to have Armstrongs. But also part of my book is examining the costs of immortality, so I feel like I'm undermining myself if I answer Armstrongs. But I would not like to feel pain and then wake up naked around my friends and mentors. So I'm gonna have to go with Armstrong.
Not just pain, but like death.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know if you feel that part, but you certainly feel the pain part. I would be more okay with the X-Men 92 version because you at least emerge fully clothed from the eggs.
Yeah, that reserves your dignity.
I wake up completely naked, covered
in
goo.
I am completely into every aspect.
Dan, what place in Philly are you going to?
Next question.
I am completely on board with every aspect of the Krakoan era, but I still, every time someone comes back and then stands around naked, covered in goo, talking to the other X-Men for like 5 minutes, I'm like, come on, man, put on a sheet.
hey, it's strategic goo. All right, so I mentioned this before when we got started or before we got started, I don't remember. What inspired your TKO short Night Train? How many babies did you sacrifice?
I've never sacrificed a baby, but I am fond of saying like I would kill a human child for, and then thing that I want. Sometimes as simple as breakfast, but. The inspiration for Night Train came from, so that's the horror short story I did at TKO. That came from a raised bridge in Queens. So down the street from where I lived at the time in Astoria, there is a above ground train track, and it goes right above some apartment buildings. And a lot of my ideas come from walking around or running on a treadmill or driving around. Like I have to be physically occupied and unable to look at my email to like generate any ideas. So long walks are good for me. And when I got the chance to pitch to TKO, I did something that I would not advise most people to do, which is that I sent Z and Sebastian 13 pitches. I put together 13 short pitches. And normally I would say, you should really just put forth your like 2 or 3 best ideas in a situation like that. But I was like, you know what? I don't know if I'm going to get this opportunity again. Let me go ham on
Throw as many at the wall.
Yeah. And hey, I mean, a few of those have landed elsewhere. So, but
throw the babies on the train.
And so that was one I came up with while I was walking around Queens. And what I love about
you heard a lot of annoying babies, didn't you?
So much crying, so many crying babies. What I love about short stories when it comes to horror is that you can have sad and upsetting endings. I do like horror that runs very dark, very bleak, but I'm really paraphrasing Stephen King here, which if you get someone to sit through 300 to 1200 pages, you can't really have a sad ending. You can't reward a reader with that long of a time investment by saying, and no one got what they wanted and everyone died. And that's true of most of Stephen King's books. You can think of a few exceptions. Pet Sematary is probably the most notable, but there is usually some sort of victory in a story that long. However, if a story is 10 to 50 pages, something that someone's going to read in one sitting, you can make that as bleak as you want. And for an opportunity like Night Train, which I think is 12 pages, I wanted to go very bleak.
That is a good way to think about horror. I never really thought of it that way. Not a big King guy. I did like the ending to It, where they bullied it to death. That's a pretty good one.
It's a really good example because so much of the book is very messed up, including right before the end, as everyone has talked about. Yeah. But the ending, it's like Bill and Beverly his wife, his adult wife, they're on the bike, they're on, his childhood bike, and they're riding fast. And even though they've lost friends and horrible stuff has happened, you get to the end of 1300 pages and there's this triumphant feeling that evil's been defeated. But it's hard to get someone to sit through something very long and have it be unhappy at the end.
Yeah. There's no, if you sit so long, you want somebody to overcome that.
Yeah, it's just a sense of, I think if anyone who's read Pet Sematary is probably his most notable example of a purely unhappy ending. That, spoiler alert for a 40-year-old book, but nothing in that book goes well for anyone. The ending is not good for any of the cast members. And it's a divisive book for that reason. Cujo actually kind of too, but I don't even think he remembers writing Cujo, so I don't know if it's a good example of.
He also doesn't remember the controversial part of It.
Sure, yeah, and I think it's true for a lot of horror movies that stand the test of time. Is that for franchises at least, there's usually that moment of triumph. For standalone movies, yeah, sure, you can have a horribly bummer ending because you're asking for a one-time investment. But for franchises, for longer commitments, and when it came to this short in particular, at the time, I mean, that was before Party and Prey was sold, that was before Rainbow Bridge was sold, and that was before Razorblades got off the ground. So when I wrote it anyway, by the time it came out, I think Razorblades was out. But I also just really wanted to prove a different side of myself. I've been doing a lot of kids books. I love doing kids books. I'm continuing to do kids books, but I had
So you sacrificed the kids.
I sacrificed the kid because I felt like I had been saying for so long that horror was kind of one of my home bases, but my output did not reflect that. So when I got the chance to do this, I was like, yeah, I'm going to show what I like here.
I need you to do some more horror so we can just do a straight horror episode.
Yeah.
I mean, it's coming up.
Good.
Marking it on my calendar.
We also have that other thing too. But X-Men 92 hold on. X-Men House of 92 2 comes out on June 1st.
Yes.
Archer and Armstrong #1 will be on shelves by this time this is out. When does issue 2 of Archer and Armstrong come out?
Early June. I can double check the exact date. Yes, so X-Men 92, unfortunately, Marvel has a lot of printing delays right now, so that will be in early June. Archer and Armstrong #2 is going to be June 8th, it's looking like. And then you can get, a double monthly dose of me going forward with both of those books.
Hell yeah. Now you can find all of its other work at your local comic book shop or your bookstore. If you don't have a local comic book shop or bookstore, go to thirdeyecomics.com. And they can hook you up and they get you set up with the Fox bundle. We're not even sponsored. I say this every episode, and it probably sounds like I'm a
I go there
shill,
every weekend and I give them free cookies. I mean,
I had
anyone who's
an amazing experience, and one of my friends really hyped the shop up for me, and I was like, don't get my hopes up. It's a comic shop, they're great, but it's a shop. And then I got there, I was like, holy shit.
It's big. It's big.
It's huge. Yeah. It's an empire, and they treated us so well, and it's all so well maintained. So anyone who's around a Third Eye, I definitely recommend checking it out.
Steve and Trish are the fucking best.
And they're actually opening another store soon. So
yeah. It was also it was nice and confusing, checking into the hotel, because it was like, okay, so Steve Foxe, I'm checking. No, Steve Orlando, he already checked. Steve Anderson, he booked the room.
I forgot to tell you guys this while you were at Third Eye, because it was getting a little close to the time. Every time that you or Steve Orlando or Steve Anderson of Third Eye Comics is on the show, Dan tries to book you all so close together, and he's claimed that he doesn't do this on purpose, but he only refers to all of you as Steve. So the first time we had Steve Orlando and Steve Anderson on the show, they were back to back on days. He didn't tell me which one was which until the first one happened.
You start asking Steve Anderson about why he wrote Marauders.
Yeah.
And then you see Dan's camera start getting darker and darker.
My thing has become so dark. Ready? You want to see this?
Your face just went out.
Yeah, for listeners at home, Dan has just been receding into darkness throughout the entire call.
And then I can come back out.
My face is all blown out by my computer monitor. You have a bright light behind you.
Yeah, but Dan just pops up looking like Pazuzu from The Exorcist every couple of minutes.
One corner, there's a little bit of light.
And it's a very eerie feeling.
So the thing is, I don't know what that light is. Hold on. No. Oh, that's the window, I think.
Yeah, I would assume. Yeah, that's the window. Your office has three big windows, really cool. Doesn't it?
It has the fucking worst lighting in here. I might buy a ring light, but I don't know where to set up. I have so much shit on my desk. I'm a mess.
I thought Scarlett would have a ring light.
Yeah. She probably actually does have a ring light I can use. You can find Steve. Where can people find you on social media?
You can find me at Steve_Foxe, Foxe, on Twitter, which I hate and try not to spend too much time on. And you can also find me at stevefoxe.com, which I keep updated with all my upcoming work. And oftentimes I put books there before they're officially announced. So if you check out my website, sometimes you can get some leaks.
Huh. Good to know.
For any publishers, he's kidding. He's joking. None of this is true. He waits until you announce it. Don't worry.
LOL, JK. You can find us at GateCrashers Pod on all social media and at GateCrashers.fan, our website where we do terrific reviews, interviews, analysis, lots of fun stuff. We have our other show, Sex and Whiskey, that comes out every month now. We do a lot of stuff. So, check it out.
Oh, and remember, folks, according to a t-shirt I have, Steve Orlando less than Steve Foxe.
Listen, the shirt speaks for itself. The shirt is answering questions that you are asking.
Yeah.
The gauntlet is thrown. I didn't even show. I can't. Well, that's not showing up. I have the ear on my desk from the Valiant promo stuff.
Dan, we can't even tell you have a desk with your current lighting.
Or an ear.
Yeah, or an ear for that matter.
Good. I'm like, I can't even see it at all. That's awesome. Because I don't have any lights in here. I don't have the lights on because it's like bright enough I don't need them. So when I do stuff as the day goes on, I just become darker and darker and just kind of become one with the darkness and just work myself to death.
Yeah. Well,
Wow.
Grimace.
What a note to end on.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Make sure you check out all of C's books, and we'll see you in next week.
The GateCrashers.